Hello there! In this video, we're going to learn about the different types of methods in Python programming, and yes, there are multiple. Without further ado, let's get into it. When you learned about object-oriented programming in Python, you probably learned about methods and how you can use them in classes. Now, did you know that you've actually learned only one out of the three different types of methods in Python? And the one you learned is probably called the instance method. And in addition to that, there's also the class method and the static method. So here's a class with all three types of methods in Python. We have a class, which is called class, and we have a class variable called C, which has a value of class attribute. And then we have an init method, which assigns an instance attribute I with the value of this. And then we have these three methods right here. The first one is, as the name suggests, an instance method. It takes one parameter self and it prints out something and then prints out self.I. So we're accessing the instance attribute I here, the attribute of the current object, the current instance. So we're passing in the instance to this method and we're accessing the attribute I of that instance. The second method here is, well, as you can see here with the decorator, which is something we talked about last time, and then also by the name of our method, we can see that this is a class method. Now it takes one parameter, it's called CLS, standing for class, and then here we print something out, and then we print out cls.c. We'll talk about what this is in just a second. And then lastly, we have a static method. We have the at and then the decorator of static method. And then our method is essentially the same thing as how we would define any function. It can take parameters, it can choose not to take parameters, it can return things, it can choose not to do that. So if I run this code and move on to talking about the three types of methods. So instance methods is probably the most common type of methods, and it's the one that you've probably been using the most. It's associated with instances of a class. It's associated with objects, which is why instance methods take a parameter which is usually called self, which is the object on which the method is being called. So using self, we can access the instance attributes as well as other instance methods of that object. So to use an instance method, we have to create an instance of the class. So we're creating an object called O, which is equal to an instance of our class called class. And then here we call O.instance method. So we're using the dot notation to call the instance method of our instance. So we don't pass self in because when we use this notation, we're essentially, this is self. So we're using O as the object passed in, as you can see defined here. So we'll be printing out O.I, which will give us a result of instance attribute. That's O.I, and then the other one is just instance method printed out, as you can see here. Now, if we try to call an instance method directly from a class, as you can see here, it will not work. While running this code, we'll see a type error saying that instance method missing one required positional argument self. That is because when we call the instance method from our class, it does not actually get past the self parameter. So we have to call it from an instance method, or from an instance of the class. The second type of method that we're going to talk about is the class method. Class methods are associated with a class itself, not the object, the class. So it takes a parameter that we usually call, you can change the name, but it's usually called CLS, standing for class. And this points towards the class that we're calling the method on. So because of the fact that we're passing in CLS, class methods can modify class attributes, but not instance attributes. Also notice we have the add class method decorator in our method definition, as you can see here on line 11 here. So we're able to call class, the name of our class, dot, and then the name of our method, class method, parentheses. We'll see we get class method, class attribute. So in our class method definition, we're able to access, well, we can first print out class method, no problem. And then we're able to use the CLS, which is implicitly passed in. We're able to use this variable to access the class attribute C that is defined here. So we're able to print out the value of our class attribute using the class variable parameter right here. Now, the last type of methods we're going to talk about is static methods. Now, static methods, if you remember from the definition, it takes neither self nor class as parameter. So it can access neither instance nor class attributes. And static methods are usually used to group related methods together in a class definition. So if we just call this, we'll see we get static method. Essentially, static methods are usually just functions in a class grouped together, or multiple methods, multiple functions grouped together in one namespace. Now to summarize, instance methods need an object, so a class instance on which it can be called, so it can access that instance as well as its attributes and methods using the parameter self. Class methods have access to the class via the CLS parameter, and static methods can access neither the instance nor the class and are essentially functions grouped in a class. And that is the end of this video on the different types of methods in Python programming. Now you know all about the instance, class, and static methods in Python. If you found this video to be helpful, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel down below. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section. With that said, thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I hope to see you in more videos.